So today we have Greg Royse. He was the Rear D commander during 0608 for Bakuba.
Mhm.
So thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So please get us up to date. Tell us about Greg and what Greg was or who Greg is.
Well, 21 years service, retired 2 years ago. And I joined because of September 11th.
Okay.
So 6 months after September 11th, I went and talked to a recruiter. I was already graduated from college and actually working a pretty good job at that point,
Yeah.
and decided to take the plunge and join. I was an OCS candidate, so
Okay.
I went through basic training OCS, and then went on to armor school, and then went on to the first unit after that. So, but since the military, I retired as a major, and now I'm working for my family's business here in North Texas, and we do custom overhead doors. And I'm the field operations manager, which basically I handle everything post production and tech support, or if there's issues or anything like that, that's where I come in. So
Okay. Well, that's awesome. And OCS, I mean that definitely a common thing, a common theme with quite a few people we've been talking to is the effects of September 11th and the joining or the call to service after September 11th. So yeah. So what did you do prior to? So were you in 27 or did you come over as a charger?
no, I came over as a charger. So
Okay.
I joined 112 as a second lieutenant, and then we were there as OF2 that deployment, and we were in First Brigade at that point,
Okay.
and we were stationed up in Solder City from March of '04 to March of '05. So 25 Cav with, I'm sure you're familiar with the April incidents on April the 4th with that
Uh-huh.
platoon from 25 Cav that got pinned down in Solder City. That was like my first week in country when that
Wow.
happened. I was working battalion staff then, so I wasn't a platoon leader at that time. So I was, really monitoring everything from the battalion headquarters that night. But we came back in March of '05, did our reintegration, and then within the month after the reintegration, we changed over to Third Brigade. So
Yep. And that's where we all became one big happy family,
right,
27, 112, we merged, we reflagged, became 112.
yep.
Platoon leader time?
So that I did. So the first 90 days of that deployment, the previous deployment, I was on staff, and then about after the first 90 days in country, they moved me over to be a platoon leader. And so I finished out that deployment as a platoon leader, and then came back for I guess about a few months afterwards. So a little over 12 months as a platoon leader, and then I was moved over to be the our company XO, shortly after our then Captain Rivera came our company commander,
Yeah.
and we I was his XO for I guess about for the train up period all the way up until the rotation to JRTC right before the deployment. So I actually became the rear D commander during or right before the JRTC rotation for that deployment itself.
Yeah. And, I remember working with you a lot, you being, of course, our company XO, but then
Yeah,
the HAC XO and everything else that you were doing. So, here we are. You pinned captain, right? Right before, or that was
yep,
back when XOs were captains, right?
right. Well, and
So,
we were so I had orders to go to the captain's career course at Fort Knox,
okay.
and then right when I right, exactly. So I was a promotable lieutenant, and the uh Colonel Goins called me into his office one day and like going, "Hey, I know you're on orders to go to Fort Knox. You're probably going to get stop loss. So what do you want to do for this during this deployment?" So, well,
Mhm.
I told him, I said, "Look, I anticipate I'm going to go on this deployment. So I'll look to be on, I anticipate being on battalion staff. So S1, S4, something like that is what I'm anticipating being, filling those positions during the deployment
Yeah.
and then go from there." And at that point, that's when he brought up the fact of, "Well, do you want to be rear D commander?" And I immediately told him no.
Right.
And he said, "Well, you need to go home and think about it." And I went, "Okay, I don't think there's anything to think about, but okay, I'm not
Yeah.
staying home. This doesn't make sense. I'm not married. I mean, I was dating my wife at the time, but we weren't even engaged at that point.
Okay.
And so I got back the next, or actually, I came back to my office, and Captain Rivera looked at me, says, "You're going to be the rear duty commander, so you might want to go ahead and accept this position and go from there." He and I had a pretty lengthy conversation about why it was a good idea for me to do that and things
Mhm.
like that. And I went, Okay, junior captain being in charge of a battalion. I'm not sure why you're doing this, but okay, I will do it, and I will try and do it to the best of my ability." So I went in the next morning to his office and I told him, "Yeah, I'll be your rear duty commander. Absolutely, I'll do it." And so it took off from there. So
Yeah, because and maybe you can help me fill in some of the fuzziness, but it was right before JRTC the MIT purge happened, right? Or was it after JRTC when
the
we
what purge
lost
again? I'm sorry.
the MIT team? Remember when they pulled
Oh
like
yeah,
so many people and we lost a lot of OICs to go off and become MIT
mid
team
teams.
members.
Yep, yep, exactly. And I don't remember all the details about that because by the time I had was selected to be the rear duty commander, I was so focused on trying to set up things for that, getting my group together because I already was told that I was going to be signing for all the property that was left
Mhm.
behind, that was like being left behind. I was going to be, figuring out how to take care, support families while their soldiers are gone, and various things like that. So I wasn't really that aware of the mid team personnel and the losses to the unit from that, but I was aware that that was happening now.
Yeah, you brought up leaving equipment. I mean,
Yeah.
we pretty much left all the heavy stuff. I mean,
There
we had
was millions of dollars worth of equipment that was left behind that I was signed for, and that was one of the experience. That experience itself taught me a lot in regards to property accountability. I mean, I had little experiences, as a
Mhm.
platoon leader, as a company XO, even as doing going through a change of command. But at that on that scale, I took a lot of hard lessons regarding um, uh, basically relying on others to do what I thought was their role.
Yeah.
And like for example, my rear DS4 was a 92 Yankee that was supposed to retire, but his orders were pulled so he could be the rear DS4. And the job that the assumptions I made a lot of the time kind of did not set me up for success when everybody came home and we were turning property back over because that was
Yeah.
a very painful process when everybody came home and we turned all that property back over to the units.
Okay. Yeah, I can only imagine, as I, went from enlisted to officer and went the logistics route and then, being in command, I can only imagine the headache of basically doing 2 change of command inventories, but now you're doing it with 5 companies. So
Right, and then also all of the stay behind sensitive items as well
yeah.
because we knew that we were going to have soldiers come into the unit. We had to send them into country with their weapon, their personal weapon.
Yep.
And so the process for excuse me, and then this is where I really, took a lot of lessons learned from this position was I didn't have a very good process of getting that equipment from rear D forward,
Yeah.
meaning, soldiers would sign for it from me. I had paperwork for that. But when they got in country, they would never, they would never tell their supply sergeant or their company commander, "Hey, I've got this weapon. You know, what am I supposed to do?" Because they didn't know. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not their job. It is their job, but I mean, that's something that you don't necessarily think about.
Yeah.
And your thought is, well, I signed for this from Rear D, so I'm good, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. And that's
Yep.
where I took a lot of lessons learned regarding what I should have done versus what I actually did. If
Yeah.
that makes
No, it makes total sense. And yeah, I mean, you think about it, you would think that process, but then, the soldier gets in country, they get to their unit, and then with everything that we had going on, they hit the ground running. And,
right,
especially a lot of the line companies, you were hitting the ground, then you were moving out to a combat outpost.
right,
So
yeah,
yeah. If you don't mind going back, and feel free if any of these questions get to whatever, we
mm-hmm,
can always
okay,
just wave and cut it off. But
yeah.
so when you were initially asked, and then when Captain Rivera came in, how did that make you feel being basically told you're going to be rear D?
At first, I didn't understand why I was selected to be the rear D commander because during my first deployment, rear D was looked down upon.
Hmm.
You guys, basically, we all thought, well, they stay behind, so they didn't experience what we experienced forward, so therefore they weren't. I can't even think of the right word, but it's basically just we didn't look highly on those guys
Yeah.
that stay behind. So that was my first, thought was, well, I'm just going to be viewed as, nothing compared to everybody that's going to be forward, and things like that. And so that was something I had to deal with because and accept because I mean I was going to be made the rear D commander no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew that. So I had to basically try and set up things for success the best I could, um, based on, um, what I thought was needed to be done. Does that make sense?
No, it makes total sense. And, yeah, that was a perception. And
Yeah.
little did everyone know what we were going to be walking into and what
Oh, I
a
know.
job you would have. And guess that's a great segue to move forward on.
Mm,
So there we are. And a lot of these, I mean, now in hindsight, we didn't know we were going to get extended. We didn't know where we were
yeah.
going to go
No.
for the most part. I mean, some of us, once we got to Kuwait, some of us knew where we were going sooner than others. But so now here, let's fast forward the forward element. The battalion forward is now in Kuwait.
Mhm.
We're pushing a torch and other elements into what now is, or what was, Warhorse, Fob Warhorse.
Yep.
And there you are. You've got your team, rear D, and feel free to just what happened from there.
So what I was trying to do was I was trying to manage rear D and also working with the family readiness group leaders like I would manage a unit.
Mhm.
And so we had, I think after everybody left, we had a battalion FRG meeting, where Sergeant Major Harris's wife was the battalion FRG leader, and we had each of the company FRG leaders there as well, along with basically I had a Rear D First Sergeant, an S1 and S4, and basically I how I managed it was I had each member of the staff, they would be representing each of the companies. So like
Okay.
for example, the first Sergeant Hamilton, he worked directly with Alpha Troop or Alpha Company. Sorry, I've been in the cav world for the last 10 years, so I got to remember company again. But Alpha Company, and then Bravo Company was, God, I'm trying to remember who managed Bravo Company. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I had a rep for Bravo Company. I did interactive with Charlie Company because that's the company I came from.
Mhm.
And then we had Delta Company, and then I think we had engineers and then HHC.
Yeah.
So some of these guys would double dip. I'd have them manage, interacting directly with two companies, but we just tried to have that. Um, the FRG leader would reach out to their rep for anything that they needed support wise, and then they would, that company rep would come see me, and then we, try and work out, what's the best way to support the family and whatever was needed, or that
Mhm.
company that was needed. So
Yeah.
we kind of announced to the FRG leaders who their reps were, and then we kind of, took off from there. So that was kind of how I saw things happening. I don't know if it worked out real well because a lot of the spouses would typically come talk to me directly. Number
Yeah.
one. Number two, I don't think they liked very much being, managed like a unit, because I
Yeah.
mean obviously they're volunteers.
Yeah.
So I mean it's me trying to manage it like a unit is probably not the best thing, but at the time that's what I thought was the best thing. So
Yeah. And that's what we knew, right? That's what you
right.
knew is, hey, hierarchy, and let's
Yep.
let's get people in place.
Yep.
And so before the first casualty, or the casualty started coming in, you were dealing with mostly what?
I was mainly dealing with spouses that were not very happy with their husband being gone.
Okay.
And it was, um, and if I remember correctly, so everybody deployed in, I believe it was um, summer, early fall.
Yes,
Um,
early fall. I would say, I mean, probably let's just say October, all
October,
boots
right.
were on ground forward.
Yeah, and then I think the first casualty came in, I believe, around November to January. I don't remember the exact time frame, but um, during that, until the first casualty started, the casualty reports started coming in, it was, really the biggest problem we had to deal with was, spouses not dealing well with their husband being gone,
Right.
and how they were going to try and figure out a way to get their husband home. And we
Okay.
had to really talk them through the have them talk out what's going on, and
Okay.
then figure out how we can best support them.
And
And
you're doing all this though with like no formal training. I mean, now I would call it, you're basically a crisis marriage counselor with no training, and the Army high
I
five you and
talked
said,
to, we had chaplains on Rear D and the
uh-huh.
brigade Rear D, and division Rear D. So I talked to chaplains constantly,
Okay.
and they were a very good source of support for us on the Rear D staff, and also to help in supporting the family members as well.
Yeah.
So that was a really, I would say, something that was almost key and essential for helping us
Mhm.
manage the what you're talking about, the family crisis or marriage counseling and things like that.
Yeah.
So
So now, November rolls around and the casualties start coming in.
mhm.
How does
so
Rudy change?
so Rudy changed a couple things. So since I was a captain that was less than 6 years in service, I could not do in-person notifications.
Okay.
But if, and that the only time there was in-person notifications is if there was a death.
Okay.
The wounded were all done via telephonic notifications, and
Okay.
I was authorized to do that.
Wow.
So for all the wounded, both me and my first sergeant tag team those, making those phone calls to the family members.
Okay.
Typically, we would get notified, like phone call from either our brigade rear commander or someone on division staff, and
Uh-huh.
then we would have to go up to division headquarters and call the family there.
Okay.
Um,
So all calls were made from the division HQ.
yep, yep,
Okay.
exactly. And so um, initially, let me back up a little bit. Initially, we did them on our own, and
Okay.
then division rear commander, God, I forget his name, he's a colonel, I can't remember his name right now. He got reports of some of these notifications of um, not being handled well.
Mm,
So he immediately instituted that all telephonic casualty notifications would be from division headquarters.
okay.
And it didn't matter what time of day. If you got called and you say, hey, you got a casualty notification you got to do, you got to go up within the hour and to division headquarters and make that phone call.
Okay. And then were there any assets or resources there at division to help you?
No, no, it
Okay.
was you basically you were given the um, the notification paper. It had the soldier's name, it had next of kin information, and their contact information, and then it also had the soldier's current status.
Mm,
And usually, it was the typical acronyms we got were he's wounded in action, or if it was severe to the point where family members like death was imminent,
yeah.
then we would tell them that somebody would be contacting them to fly them to wherever their family member was.
Wow.
Typically, they would talk about flying them to Germany in the event that the injuries were severe enough to where they thought that it might be life-threatening injuries.
Wow. So how
So
did
I know, like the one of the first incidents or casualty reports we had is from the scout platoon. It was one where Sergeant Haynes was killed, and his gunner. I remember calling his wife
Mhm,
and telling him that his injuries were very severe,
right.
and that she was probably going to be flown to Germany because they didn't think he was going to make it.
Yeah.
Now he actually did survive, but I believe, if I remember correctly, she was flown to Germany to be by his side um,
Yeah.
until either he passed away or he was transported eventually to San Antonio. So
Yeah. How did making those calls wear on you and your first sergeant?
they were tough, especially the first ones because it's just so raw, and you don't know how the family member is going to react. Um, Most of them were appreciated the being told,
Mhm.
but they were tough.
Yeah.
And the what do you call it? Over time, you got so used to making the phone calls that you just became numb to it after a period of time. And we had so many. I think if I remember, the last count was like somewhere around 90 casualties that weren't killed in action.
Yeah.
And so we made those phone calls every time.
Yeah, and
And
that 90 was like some severe life changing injuries and
yeah,
you
exactly.
you had the tough task of making that call.
Yeah, it was something that I was not expecting, because I think
Mhm.
we all went into this deployment thinking that it was just going to be we're there to set up Iraq for success. Everything's calmed down. We're not going to really run into too many issues, and then I think we were, I guess, underestimated what was really going to happen during that deployment.
Oh yeah. I mean, and you come in from 112 and you guys had your experience in Solder City.
Right.
you know, I don't want to a percentage of the battalion was from 27 Cav, but there was a
Hmm.
large chunk of us that were from 27.
Yep.
And that first deployment was, yes, we did Fallujah. Yes, we did Najaf. And yeah, we were at Taji and did operations there. But even in those very high intensity conflict or actions of Fallujah and Najaf, we did not face the just magnitude of casualties and wounded and KIA like what happened in Bakuba. So
Right.
yeah, so you brought up Sergeant First Class Haynes, the
Mm.
15 November, multiple KIA.
Yep.
How did that work? Or how did that process play
So,
out for you?
we, myself and Sergeant Hamilton were told by the brigade ready commander that we had casualties and that there were some killed in action. So before we could do anything, Sergeant Haynes and the other soldiers that were killed, their families had to be notified first. So we basically sat and waited at Brigade Rear D headquarters until we got the word that their families were notified. Once we got that word, then we started making the phone calls for all the other families that had wounded.
Right.
So both Sergeant Hamilton and I split up how many there were. I don't remember. I think there was like maybe two or three, if I remember correctly. Um, and we just started making phone calls. Which basically that was before we went to. I had to go to division headquarters, so I just basically went in my office, shut the door, and just started making phone calls, um, and notifying families from there. Um, and then from there, we also needed to figure out um, how we were going to support the families for the funeral,
Okay.
because we were told that we needed to send a unit rep to the funeral.
Uh-huh.
So I know the first one that we went to for that incident was down in San Antonio, and both Sergeant Hamilton, myself, Brigade Rear D Commander, and Sergeant Major were at that funeral. And lesson learned we learned from that one was, since we had another casualty that occurred that during the funeral, and we didn't have myself or Sergeant Hamilton available to make a phone call to notify families. So at that point, we decided, okay, we need to start splitting these up. We
Right.
can't both be at the same thing and not be able to support families if there's another casualty event that happens. So for Sergeant Haynes, his parents lived in New York City, so I went to Sergeant Haynes' funeral up in New York City and met his father and mother up there. Very pretty amazing family.
Oh yeah.
That his dad was a lawyer in Manhattan. His mom was a member of the oldest women's club there in New York City, and really just a neat family we got to really meet while we were up there.
Yeah. But yeah, it had to be a tough trip to make for the
Yeah,
casualties. And then I know you took a couple people. I think Zimmerman said he went with y'all,
he
but
did.
because he
He
didn't come forward yet, he was one of the late deployers.
Well, he was actually reclassing from a kilo to a delta,
Yeah. Yep.
and so that was when the realignment for the deltas were supposed to be going. You're supposed to have the Rista squadrons,
Hmm.
being created, and they had to fill in the holes with guys that wanted to reclass.
Yeah.
So Zimmerman had just finished up his reclass school, and he was just waiting for his flight to go forward. And that's when we found out that Sergeant Hayes was killed, and he came up to the funeral because he's from Philadelphia, so he went up
Right.
there on his own and met us up there. So
But you brought up a very just kind of scary point though during that first funeral is you had to split up because the casualties kept coming in.
yep, yep,
There was no break. I mean,
yep.
that period of time, there was casualties on a regular basis.
I remember Christmas Eve, we got notified that one of the soldiers were killed,
Right.
and we had to locate his wife.
Mm,
Um, and she was in the local area,
okay.
but we didn't have a physical address where she was, and we
Yeah.
had to we had to track her down. It took us a few days to find out where she was, and
Okay.
we finally did find her, but she was notified, I believe, on Christmas Eve,
Wow.
that her husband was killed.
Yeah. Yeah. So you guys did not have an easy job at all.
That was, I will say, that was the toughest job that I've had
Okay.
while in the military. Emotionally, um, from that emotional standpoint, it was a long. I was a Rear commander for 22 months, and that's including the JRTC rotation, and that was very just emotionally taxing for those 22 months.
Yeah. Because out of those 22 months, 16 were people were forward. So, or if not
Yeah,
more, 'cause we did have the, sensitive item guards. I don't remember if we had a boat or not, but, I think we could safely say at least 18 months, there were people forward.
yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, that's a huge stressor on you than just everything you had to deal with. So as the deployment continued, how did your battle rhythm change, and did things get worse for you with, like, dealing with family?
So when it became, I guess, the battle rhythm changed. So during this period of time, also right before everybody deployed, I actually got engaged to be married. And we were trying to plan a wedding around when everybody was coming home because
Mhm.
we wanted the members of the unit to be there.
Yeah.
And so that was one thing on a personal side that I was focused on. And then on the professional side, I had family members that were um, on alert, stressing a lot. One thing that really caught us off guard was the news report after Sergeant Haynes was killed. Somehow CNN or one of the news agencies, I forget which one it was, got mentioned Scout Platoon 112 Cav
Right.
um, had soldiers killed today
Yeah.
before families were even notified,
Mm.
and our phone started blowing up,
Yeah.
and I had to get in contact with brigade or division public affairs
Right.
and get them to get the news under control,
Mhm.
and but also try and calm down families.
Yeah.
And I had to basically send a notice to the family readiness group leader, and tell her that um, families will be notified in a proper manner
Mhm.
and a proper time. And
Yeah.
that's all I could tell them, because
Uh-huh.
I knew exactly who was injured.
Right.
But I couldn't tell them, if the soldier was killed in action, I couldn't tell them that. They had to
Yeah.
be notified by the notifying officer.
Yeah.
So that really, I mean, you had to really just maintain composure
Mhm.
when families are just on edge and
Right.
want answers.
Yeah.
And then just trying to maintain some sort of additional normalcy in
Mhm.
your day-to-day, work, trying to do PT, trying to, do everything else. It's a constant, 24/7 situation in which um, you really had to just be on alert more so than any deployment I've ever been on.
Yeah, so you probably start dreading when that phone rang.
Oh yeah, and it rang a lot too. And it was yeah, it was tough, and definitely it wore on me pretty hard,
Okay.
especially when as the battalion ready commander, I would always follow up with families.
Okay.
After we got word that they were notified, I would call them and let them know that the unit rep is here. They need
Mhm.
help, support, and I had family members that would ask me how they died and did they feel pain.
Mm. Yeah, it's definitely tough because you weren't given any training, and then how do you answer those type of questions? And
You try and make them feel better
yeah,
is the only thing I could think of.
yeah. So you did what you had to do to try to give them some type of peace. Yeah, and I don't know if everyone truly understood the tax that that took on you and just the whole rear D, and that that perception was not a good perception because you guys had a tough
Yeah,
battle.
well,
Tough
and nor was I ever expecting anybody to, or was I looking for sympathy.
Right,
And nor was I going to try to make a big deal about, well, you guys were forward, but I dealt with this.
right,
That wasn't what we were trying to do.
right.
We were trying to, provide for families the best we could, with the resources that we had.
Yeah,
And I wasn't trying, at least from my perspective, I tried not to, um, make point the finger at, um, anybody else going, well, I had a tougher job than you did. So we
right.
we all had tough jobs. It
Yeah.
didn't matter what our role was. So
And, I know sometimes the memory's not the greatest, speaking on my part, but for what I remember, there was never any talk of rear D is asking, rear D, rear D. It was always a positive, and that was
Yeah,
doing exactly what you're talking about. Because fast forward through our individual careers,
yeah,
and even something as simple as a training exercise where the rear D is a problem. So you
yeah.
you managed it very well, you dealt with horrible circumstances, and like you said, you didn't wanna be a burden on those forward. You
Mhm.
did what you had to do to provide the best for those service member, families and for those that were back. Because I mean, WTU, WTB was still, I mean, I believe at that time it was formed, but you had to get people into that. I mean, you there was a lot of admin work you were doing. It
Right.
wasn't just
And
as simple as take someone over to this unit and it's over.
right. Well, and then the other thing I hated doing, and this is the one thing I really did not like doing, was when soldiers started coming home on R&R.
Right.
I had some of them that would go and speak to mental health professionals, which is totally within their right to do, and they should do that.
Yep.
But what started happening was the mental health professionals would tell them, "Well, you're not mentally healthy enough to go forward for deployment, so you need to stay here."
Yep.
And so they would come tell me this, and then I would have to, send a notification to the unit forward going, "Hey, so and so's not coming back because they have been diagnosed with whatever mental health issue."
Right.
And I never got responses to those emails, but I can only imagine uh, if I was in that position, I would have lost my mind. But
Yeah.
again, it was notifying them, and then we had to again provide support for those soldiers while they were either going through their treatment and get better to redeploy forward, or they were eventually, you know, um, medically retired from mental health issues,
Yeah.
and go through all that as well. So
That one was a tough one too, because
yeah,
you'd get some of the names and some of the jobs, and you'd like, wait a minute, who did what? What?
right, yeah,
So,
exactly.
big advocate at being a mental health professional now,
Mhm.
and even back then. I mean, I believe I was a good advocate for some mental health, but there was always just that kind of feeling like, wait a minute, but
And that
it
was
is what
always
it
my
is.
question back to the doctors when they would call me after speaking with a soldier. I'm like going, okay, so what is their path going forward to get better? And well, and they would always give me the standard medical evaluation and
Yep.
things like that. And I'm not a mental health professional, so I was like, okay, well, are they going to get better? Can we send them forward at some point, or
Mhm.
is their path to be no longer in the military now?
Yep.
And that was always the conversation I had, and it 9 times out of 10 it was going, yeah, they're
Yep.
not going forward again.
Yep.
And
They're done.
yeah, exactly. That's what
So,
we
I'm
usually
sorry.
ran into. So
So, you know, that happened or that process happened for like we were talking about. Let's just say, so many months. So now here we are and the battalion is starting to come home. What did that look like for you and Rear D?
um it, interesting, I think, because I was nervous about everybody coming home, number
Yeah.
one. Number two, we had to make sure that soldiers and families, you know, met up. I know, like on the parade field, when you guys go ahead. And I was met up on the parade field, where's my soldier, blah blah blah. And I was at every one of those, making sure that not everything went smoothly, and I was trying to stay in the background and not be seen. The
Right.
only people I went on the field to go talk to were the S3 when he showed up because he was in charge of a flight,
Mhm.
and then finally Colonel Goins when he showed up.
Yep.
Other than that, I didn't go and see anybody else on the field ever because I didn't want to make it about me,
Right.
because I was home for the 15 months.
Uh-huh.
So I wanted to make sure that families met up with their soldier, and they got home safely. And
Yep.
that's really my sole purpose in that. Um, wanted to make it as smooth as arrival for them, and then also just get them to their families as quickly as possible, so they're not having to stick around and wait and figure out what's going on. So that's kind of what we our goal for all the flights coming in, and then also have the plan for getting everybody go through the reintegration
Yeah.
and all the reverse, SRP and everything else, and then get them on leave and go from there. Because we were rear D all the way through the block leave after the deployment too. So
Yeah. And I will say, comparing the first time to the second time, coming home was much smoother. Now, yes, I was on like whatever the last flight was, but still, you're you guys received the equipment, everything got turned in, you did your thing on the parade field and gone. So, you guys had that running very smoothly. And the soldiers, definitely, they might not have been able to say thank you or give you a high five, but they
yeah,
definitely, it was like you said, you were the quiet professional in the back where everything got done, people got home
yeah,
and got a chance to start decompressing after that deployment.
right.
So, rear D's over. 112. Did you stick around? What did your post 06, 08 look like for you?
So I was in the S3 shop waiting for my captain's career course
Hmm.
date. I had orders by that point. And I was, the assistant S3, and then the S3 left, and then I was the acting S3 for a period of time. Excuse me, and through, um, we actually had personnel go to we were guest OCs for the JRTC rotation
Okay.
for oh god, what unit was it? I think it was third ID or something like that. I was guest OC down there for 30 days.
Okay.
Came back, finished out my time in the S3 shop, and then PCS to Fort Benning in that following summer, around June, I guess, is when I finally PCS to Fort Benning for the career course.
Okay.
So,
So how did this time period affect rest of your career and your life?
well, so professionally, it was that standpoint of the really paying attention to, like I said in the beginning, the property accountability,
Mhm.
especially as I took command when I went to First Armored Division. I had in my mind how property accountability was going to go, and it wasn't going to be left up to someone saying, "Hey, I got this,"
Mhm.
because we had a lot of issues with property accountability when we got back, and I didn't want to go through that headache. Period.
Right.
So that was one lesson learned. Another lesson learned was how important family readiness groups are,
Yeah.
and wanting to have a successful family readiness group as a troop commander.
Yeah.
And what I noticed was you're not going to get family involvement unless you get soldier involvement.
Mm.
And so, and really the key part of that involvement is the junior NCOs.
Okay.
So, and because when I first took command and had very little interest in the family readiness group, I appealed to all of my E5s and I said, "These soldiers are not going to be part of the family readiness group unless you guys are."
Right.
And from that point forward, we had everybody involved in the family readiness group, even soldiers that weren't even in relationships or even married.
Okay.
They everybody was part of it from that point forward, and I account that the E5s, getting them to be participants in that really helped going forward for that.
And
And then
that's a great clip there for future commanders of, whatever level. You
yeah,
want a successful FRG or SF, whatever they're calling it now,
right.
get your sergeants involved.
Yep. And
Awesome.
then from a emotional standpoint, you really just got to keep in mind that um, eh, families do matter, and
Right.
that you got to take care of your families. And how you take care of your families is you got to take care of soldiers as well.
And
And you
it
know
can't
that
just be something you say. It can't be your bumper sticker that
right,
is just that, a bumper sticker. We care.
right. Right, exactly. And those were the big lessons learned, and how that affected me going forward, especially in my career.
Okay.
Uh, and really, the interesting thing was is that when I initially joined, I was only planning on being for 3 years.
Wow. Okay.
But when 3 years came and went, I went. I'm still having fun.
Yeah.
And I don't see myself doing anything else.
Yeah.
So therefore, I just kept going, and then it just really enjoyed my time and wouldn't have done anything else really differently.
That's awesome. And, you know, I know it's a cliche, but it was the worst of times with the best of people.
Oh yeah,
So,
I tell you, it was that was the being a troop commander was the best job I ever had, but
yeah,
rear D commander was the hardest job I had throughout my entire career.
yeah, definitely. I can't even imagine, and I don't want to imagine. And thank you for what you did.
Thank you.
Um, Maybe a tough question here, and if you don't want to disclose, that's okay. Have you processed everything? Did you sit down with a counselor? Have you worked with
Yeah,
mental health over the years?
so I did not seek mental health throughout my career. But when my first, I guess, intake with the VA, I'm going, yeah, I got to talk with somebody.
Okay.
And it wasn't just from this deployment, but even
Yeah.
because I was involved in 7 deployments in 21 years. So there's a lot of things that happened. Even my last deployment to Afghanistan, our sergeant major was killed,
Wow.
and so just talking about all of that was just, it was helpful.
Yeah.
I still have moments of, thinking back and how things were really tough during the Bakuba deployment too.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
mental health did help a lot.
That's good to hear. And yeah, that cumulative just trauma where,
Mhm.
and it's hard because yes, there's EBH. Yes, there is like, you want to try to, there's a, I hate to say time and place. Like you can't be trying to triage mental health on the objective, but how do we get better at it? But, there's just such a cumulative trauma. I mean, if you look at like a deployment like Bakuba, but like you were saying, the span of your career, there is trauma throughout the entire span.
Right,
So, but
right.
that's good to hear that VA is working out for you, that you're speaking to people, and that's always good. We always
Yeah.
want to champion mental health.
Well, and the amazing thing is that you always hear, never anything positive about VA.
Right.
But I will say that VA is a lot better than I ever thought it was.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
and it's really, I mean, there's a lot of resources that are there
Mhm.
for helping get through a lot of things,
Yeah.
especially with mental health, with medical, or even anything else that you may need as well.
And I think that's a great clip for people too, is that the VA, yes, some suck, but there are a lot of good ones out there.
Yep,
Give it a try. At least
yep,
try. And
yep.
if that doesn't work, then use another resource or be the squeaky wheel that gets or change. Try, each location can be different. So
Yep, exactly.
that's good. Good to hear. Any last words? Any just kind of the floor is yours. How would you like to wrap things up about this time?
Um, it definitely learned a lot, and gave me a whole new perspective on how important every part of a unit in a deployment is.
Yeah.
And it can, lead to a lot of success, or it can lead to a lot of, pain as well. So how that is managed across all levels is extremely important,
Yeah.
and having those leaders be able to, have that cohesion throughout, rear forward,
Mhm.
is key and essential for any deployment.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I truly appreciate you sharing. I know that's not easy, especially, that deployment was rough.
Yep.
Bakuba 0608 was not an easy time. Uh, can't argue. You did not have a easy job, and but you were good at it. You helped enable the battalion to be successful and focus forward, and that speaks highly of you and the team you built. So
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it, Greg. I know Big Mo probably told you that many times too,
He
because
did. I did appreciate him telling me that too. So.